Greetings. This is TK Trap, aka Trappist Magus, here with LVX777. Today we're going to continue our study on the mystical Qabalah. We're going to read chapter 23 on Ha, the sphere dealing with Mercury. So let's begin that process. Yes. Let's begin that process. Hope you guys are having a swell evening. This evening ain't so bad for me. La 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 doo, doo, doo. I took a walk. If you are if you're interested in this kind of content, go ahead and hit that like button. As usual. And I think we should go ahead and begin. Peace to everybody here. Mo B, it's good to see you, always. Matthew Watson, peace, bro. Nasir Vendril, peace. Leah the Lovely 92, peace. Thank you for liking the video. Oh, looks like nope, that's the right one. Cool. El Diablo Negrowth, peace, bro. I think I'm experiencing a little bit of a lag, but that's okay. Alright, well, in any case, let's get started with the text. And let me know if you guys need any change. Excuse me, I'm on a little bit of pause because it sounds like there's a lot of drama going on outside of my door. Maybe we should just take the camera outside and see what's happening. Let's listen. Alright. No need to get involved with drama, because I always win. Alright, anyways, the important thing is this book. So, chapter 23, Had. Let's take this thing out the way. The title of Had. And it's kind of funny, as you'll see, that the tarot cards associated with this sphere, the number 8, if you look at them, I don't know if you guys have whatever decks you have, but the 8s are usually not so pleasant. I'm not going to say unpleasant, but they're also not so pleasant. And what I mean by that is, like, you'll notice that the 8 of Wands is swiftness. And the way that the Unfortunate describes swiftness is like too much force at once, like an overload. You know, it's like an overwhelming force. So the swiftness doesn't necessarily mean something that's fast. It also represents too much at once. 8 of Cups, abandoned success. So what we're also talking about is potential that's wasted. As a matter of fact, we're talking about 8 of Swords, shortened force. And again, when you look at these 4 cards, what they're representing here is the force of Had on the 4 different worlds. So the 8 of Wands, Had and Atziluth, swiftness, that too much at once that I was talking about. That's the force of Hod and Atziluth. Eight of Cups, the force of Hod and Bria. When it talks about abandoned success, what we're talking about is potential, so much potential, but only a small amount is being able to be useful. Eight of Swords, short in force, the same type of thing going on in the astral plane. Then, of course, Eight of Pentacles, prudence. And when you think about the word prudence, we're talking about someone who's very reserved, very restrained. So what we're getting from this 8 from Hod across the board is the concept of reservation and having a lot but not using a lot. As a matter of fact, using the bare minimum. So that's what we're getting with these 8s. All right, let's continue. Lotus O. Drake, good to see you as well. Peace, peace. Mystical Koala, welcome to the Mystical Qabalah once again. Nicole Berkeley, peace. Shimmy Lake, greetings, greetings. Speaking of the tarot, you know, I did a tarot reading the other night, and I don't think I'd be the only one saying that it was pretty badass. So I should probably do it more often. Somebody commented that, yeah, when you see a real tarot reading done, you really realize that some of these other folks don't know what the hell they're doing. They're just shuffling cards and saying whatever comes off the top of their head. But anyways, I ain't calling no names. I don't care to do that. I'll let y'all do that. But I think I might do that a little bit more often. Maybe at least once a month, something like that. A reading for the collective. Anyways, let's get back to this. So the title of Hod, Glory. Magical image, a hermaphrodite. Situation on the tree, at the foot of the pillar of severity. The Yetziratic text. The 8th path is called the absolute or perfect intelligence, because it is the mean of the primordial, which has no root by which it can cleave or rest, save in the hidden places of Gidula, from which emanates its proper essence. The god name, dealing with the level of Atziluth, is Elohim Zevaoth, the god of hosts. The archangel, Michael, like unto God. Now, you might see this different depending on your source. As far as I'm concerned, the archangel dealing with Hod is Raphael. Some people switch Michael and Raphael. It depends on what system you use. And it's not simply preference, like, oh, I just feel like my truth. It's not that shit. It has to do with the technicalities behind it. I place Raphael here because we're dealing also with correspondences like Thoth, like Hermes, basically the healer. And as was explained in the Ladder of Lights, there's actually 2 types of healers. Michael is a healer also, but he heals on a different level. So for me personally, I place Raphael here with Hod, and Michael with Tifereth. You'll see other people in other systems switch it around, and they have the reasons for doing so. It's literally not that big of a deal. As long as you're able to back up why you choose what you choose, you're good to go. Order of Angels, Benai Elohim, the sons of God. So coincidentally, that would be switched too. Mundane chakra would be Mercury, Kokhav. The spiritual experience is a vision of splendor. The virtue of Hod is truthfulness. And that would make sense. Like I said, dealing with Thoth, Tahuti, the scribe of the gods. The virtue of this sphere is truthfulness. The vice is falsehood, dishonesty. So when you're in this realm of Hod, what is good is truth, what is evil is falsehood. And there's no masking or no hiding it when you get to this level. It is what it is. If you've got a spirit of falsehood and dishonesty, that's what you are. If you've got a spirit of truthfulness, that's what you are. And you know what you are. There should be no confusion. You don't wake up in the morning thinking to yourself, oh my God, am I false? Am I a lie? Am I living a lie? I mean, if you do, then you might want to reconcile that. Correspondence in the microcosm, the loins, and the legs, based on the position of this sphere with the physical body. the symbols, the names, and the versicles and apron. All right. So as I said before, dealing with the tarot cards of Hod, we've got the Eight of Wands, that's called Swiftness. The Eight of Cups, that's called Abandon and Success. The Eight of Swords, Shortened Force. The Eight of Pentacles, Prudence. And if you're one of those people who are an Orphic Magus as opposed to a Hermetic Magus, what you should do right now is to grab your tarot deck and lay out those 4 eights. The Eight of Wands, Eight of Cups, Eight of Swords, Eight of Pentacles. And meditate on the symbols on those cards as we read this chapter. Because the energy behind the 8 is fully seen when you examine the 4 different 8s. Underworld God 500, peace. C-Main, peace. Dub VT, peace my brother. Vince Cashmere, peace, peace. Aw, always good to see you. Lance Benefield, peace. Lance Benefield says, what an amazing reading the other night, live. Gratitude, Trav. Thank you, thank you. I should do that more often. It felt really good. I think I will. I definitely will. Incognito. Peace, peace. Incognito says, what's up, chat? What's crackin', Trav? Just a quick question. What books do you recommend for communication skills? I've been struggling with it lately. It depends. Are you trying to communicate with females? Are you trying to communicate with people in general? Trying to communicate with business partners? I ask that because there are books that specify in each one of those levels. Ultimately, yeah. Maybe I can give you a better book title if you give me specifications. Ashley Jones, good evening. Peace. Ashley Jones says, I'm loving this session. Hey, we just began. Wait till we get into it. Hell yeah. Alright. Alright, so let's keep going. Hopefully you've got your 4 cards. If you are an Orphic Magus. If not, just listen or read along, because I'm sure you got the book by now. I've only been reading this for God knows how long. Certainly you aren't just relying on me to read it to you. Color in Atziluth is violet purple. The color in Bria is orange. That's the one we normally work with. The color in Yetzirah is russet red. The color in Asaya is yellowish black, flecked, and white. Always chosen. Peace. Leah the Lovely 92 says, where can I purchase the book you're reading from? My brother asks me that like all the time. Like every time I buy something, he's like, where'd you buy it from? And every single time I'm like, guess. Because if I don't leave my house, where the hell do I buy anything from? But to not be a smartass, I get it from Amazon. This is actually a very, you can find it. It's not hidden or blocked. The price isn't crazy. Mystical Qabalah. Moby says, got my cards pulled. Awesome. Alicia M, peace. It's been a minute. Alright. This camera lag is crazy. Alright. Verse 1. The 2 root powers of the universe are represented on the Tree of Life by Chokmah and Binah, positive and negative force. It is held by the Kabbalists that, although each Sephirah emanates its next in numerical order, that these 2 supernals, the tree being once established, are reflected down it diagonally in a particular way. This is clearly indicated in the Yetziratic text of this Sephirah, wherein it says that Hod has no root by which it can cleave or rest, save in the hidden places of Qabalah, from whence emanates its proper essence. Qabalah, be it remembered, is another name for Chesed. So what she's talking about here is, if you've got a diagram of the Tree of Life in front of you, you'll notice that there is a connection between the blue sphere of Chesed and the orange sphere of Hod. And that connection is balanced by Tifereth. So what she's saying here is that as you start at the top of Kether and these Sephirah emanate downward and outward, each sphere comes out of the next. So basically, when Kether explodes, Chokmah is the next emanation. And that overabundance of Chokmah balances out with the third Sephirah of Binah, and that process continues to the following spheres. What she's saying here is that what you'll find in Had is the essence of Chesed, also known as Gidulah. So the essence of Mercury and all the energy and correspondences and everything that you know about Mercury has its roots in Jupiter. Now that's esoteric and that's occult, but if you understand correspondences and symbols and how to interpret these symbols, that should start to connect a few dots for you. Obviously, the planet Mercury did not come out of the planet Jupiter. We're using symbols to explain how energy works. Check? Check. Okay, so number 2, Binah, which we know as the sphere of Saturn. Binah is the giver of form. Chesed, which we know of as Jupiter. Chesed is cosmic anabolism, the organization of the units formulated by Binah into complex interacting structures. Had, the reflection of Chesed, is in its turn a Sephirah of form and represents this coagulating principle in another sphere. So Kether, being the ultimate spark of consciousness and life force, as it flows out, that spark of life force becomes more and more tempered until after about 10 layers, it becomes you, or a dog, or a tree, or an insect, or any of the things that you experience with your 5 senses. But nothing starts here on the physical plane. Everything starts in the absolute plane, and it slowly becomes something finite. So that's what this whole system of Qabalah is teaching about. That process of going from soul to matter and then back to soul again. What she's saying here in verse 2 is that along that process, the third step, Binah, the sphere of Saturn, that is where form begins. So what's that mean? That means that before form began, there's pure force, pure energy. No definition, no distinction. It's just pure life force. It isn't until we get to the third step of Binah, the realm of Saturn, that things start to take somewhat shape. What she says next is that Chesed is cosmic anabolism, the organization of the units formulated by Binah into complex interacting structures. So, if Binah starts to give form and give shape to things, what Chesed, what Jupiter does, is it begins to take those forms and those shapes, and it begins to organize those forms and those shapes into more complex forms of life. So it takes the very simple and begins to organize and arrange it into something complex. All right, that's what Chesed does. What she says following that is Had, which is the reflection of Chesed, is in turn a Sephirah of form, and it represents this coagulating principle in another sphere. So take this organization of form and take the form-giving principle itself. Those two combined are going to give you a glimpse of what Had represents. Had is about giving things a very distinct shape, form, and organization. This is also why Had is the representative, or should I say represented by, study and science. Scrutiny of all types. Number 3. Chokmah, on the other hand, is the dynamic principle. It reflects into Gibera, which is the cosmic catabolist, representing the breaking down of the complex into the simple, thus releasing latent energy, and this reflects again into Netzach, the life force of nature. So we just looked at one triangle going from Binah to Chesed back to Had, and that has everything to do with organizing, giving shape, and giving form. Now there's an opposite triangle going from Chokmah to Gibera to Netzach. Now if that first triangle deals with giving form, the other triangle deals with pure force. So what she said here is Chokmah, on the other hand, is the dynamic principle. Dynamic, which means it moves, right? Dynamic as opposed to static. Static means it's standing still. That's Binah, giving it shape. So Binah takes the radiant life force of Kether and makes it stand still. That's how it's able to take shape. Now, on the opposite end, what she's saying is that Chokmah is dynamic, and it reflects into Geburah, which is Mars. It reflects into Geburah, which is known for breaking things apart, breaking things down. If the god of war is associated with Mars, it's not because it likes to go to war and fight people. It's because war is here to break things apart. That's what war is designed for. Now, there's a place for that in the universe, because if everything just continued to grow without any type of discipline, this would be a terrible existence. For example, you wouldn't want cancer cells to rapidly propagate within your body. That's awful. So you need the Mars force to start to break that shit apart. Likewise, this is what the Mars or Geburah aspect does. It breaks down the complex into the simple. So when it breaks this complex form and force into something simple, it's releasing the energy that's inside of it. And that release of energy is where we get Venus, Netzach, nature, as we know it. So that's what she's saying in verse number 3. Stuffed dog. Peace, my brother. Peace. Okay, number 4. It is important for the understanding of the 5 lower Sephiroth to note that the present stage of evolution has brought some degree of development of human consciousness in their spheres. Tifereth represents the higher consciousness wherein the individuality unites with the personality. Netzach and Hod represent the force and form aspects of astral consciousness respectively. Because human consciousness has made a degree of development in these spheres, their purely cosmic nature is considerably overlaid by its influences. And as human consciousness, being developed in Malkuth, is a consciousness of forms derived from the experience of physical sensations, the conditions of Malkuth are reflected back, though in a rarefied form, into Hod and Netzach, and in a lesser degree into Tifereth. Yesod is even more markedly conditioned by the rising influence of Malkuth. The main thing about that verse is that even though Malkuth is the end of the food chain, the last step on this cosmic human centipede, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a influential part of this chain of command. Because even as everything is funneled down into Malkuth, Malkuth and Yesod are intricately linked. So what happens in Malkuth reflects back again in Yesod. And that starts a chain reaction, because that reflection goes all the way back up. So that just goes to show it's not that one sphere is bigger or better than the other. There's a relationship. It is a, what's a good word for it? As above, so below. That's one phrase that they use. Everything is you pushed out. So when you go about your daily life, and you see all these events happening to you and all these different things happening, nothing is separate. Nothing is separate. It's all a reflection of what's actually going on the inner planes of your being. I wanted to say symbiotic stuff, dog. I wanted to say that, but I thought there was a better word, so I didn't say that. But everything that you experience is a reflection of what's actually happening on your mental plane, your astral plane, your etheric plane, and on your spiritual plane. What you focus on expands. So what you choose to pay attention to is literally what your higher selves are choosing to focus on, right? Everything's happening in the world. People are suffering, dying, being tortured. There's also people who are overcoming adversity, who are celebrating the birth of a child, who are starting a new business, who just hit $100 million. There's everything happening in the world. But literally what you're choosing to focus on is your experience. And it isn't simply as arbitrary as focusing on something. There's a reason you chose to focus on this or that. So what I'm saying is that there's an unconscious influence. In any case, everyone's world and everyone's reality is their own. So the things that you've got circulating in your aura, that's what's happening within the totality of your bodies, of your existences. Alligator, peace, bro, peace. Always good to see you. Alligator says, greetings. I got my Thoth altar lit for the Hod chapter. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Thoth has been showing up real heavy. Incognito, to answer your question, you might want to get a book called Figuring Out People. Figuring Out People, parts 1 and 2. It's going to be a heavy read, but this subject is not easy. That's just the main one that comes to mind, and that's actually high level. If I could think of a lower level one to start out with, I'll let you know if you're still here. But that book will take up your time forever, and you'll definitely learn something. If what you want to know is how to be able to communicate with people. Stray Panther, peace, peace. Maybe I could find something better. Let me see. Let me stop what I'm doing and see if I can figure out a book about communicating with folks. And that's assuming you're still on this live stream. You know what? Yeah, I've got a book in the other room. Hold on just a second. I'm going to go grab it. There we go. Alright, disregard that first book recommendation. Because like I said, that's probably too high level. I'm going to keep it real. Check these two out to start. Where's that camera at? Oh, the camera's shut off. How about that? How you love that? Alright, so there's an author that goes by the name of Patrick King. Patrick King. And he's got 2 books that I have read and highlighted. And they've certainly helped me. Just fixing my camera here because it went off for some reason. Ooh, yeah, 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 yeah. Alligator, do you have the Thoth Tarot deck? Cosmic Flow, peace, peace, bro. Question to everybody in the chat while I get my camera working again. What is your favorite tarot deck to use? I've got my favorite. I'm probably not going to share the name of it. However, the Rider White seems to be the best one to learn the symbology. What do you guys think is the best deck for you? Yeah, 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 yeah. There we go. Back in business. All right. Yes, Patrick King. Don't rush me because this does not have anything to do with the chapter we're reading. So I'm doing this because I want to. Patrick King. Get a book called The Art of Witty Banter. And also get a book called Better Small Talk. These two should help you plenty. Now, back to the subject at hand. Stuff Dog says, how you going to ask us, then in the same breath say you're not going to share yours? That's all the way backwards. I mean, if you watch closely enough, you know I'm going to share it. I just don't share it with everybody. Elisha Eternal says, Thoth Tarot deck is actually what brought me here. After I pulled the Eon, I had to learn what Yesod was. Absolutely. Incognito, you're very welcome. Alright, so let's get back to the text. So, number 5. So she just talked about how force and form travels down the tree from Kether all the way to Malkuth, and that Malkuth reflects back up into Yesod, and the process continues. So number 5. This is due to the fact that the mind of any being of a sufficient degree of development to have achieved an independent will works objectively on its environment, thereby modifying it. There's a clue right there. When we talk about free will, everyone assumes that they have free will, especially if they don't know what free will is. They assume they have free will. But from what I've discovered in my studies and my observations is that free will is something that you have to earn. You have to take it. It's just like freedom, right? Being a slave on plantation earth, freedom is not given to everybody just because you're alive. If you think you have free will, I'd ask you to define what that means. Most likely you're going to say, well, it's because I can do what I want. Okay. But where does the foundation of what you want come from? Why do you want what you want? Why do you want a Big Mac? Because you saw a commercial advertising Big Macs, right? Why do you want the things you want? Because it's been implanted into you to want those things. So can you analyze something about your desires, your likes and your dislikes, that was not given to you by an outside force? Because if you cannot, how can you say you've got free will? So what she says here is, once again, this is due to the fact that the mind of any being of a sufficient degree of development to have achieved an independent will works objectively on its environment, thereby modifying it. So look, one clue of you actually having free will is whether or not you're able to modify your environment to a sufficient degree. She says here, let us make this clear by an illustration. Creatures of a lowly development, such as the simple forms of life that have no motile power, like sea anemones, can exercise very little influence over their environment. But a higher and more intelligent type of creature can exercise a great deal, forcing its environment by its energy and intelligence to conform to its will, as when a beaver builds a dam. Human beings, the highest of all creatures of matter, have learnt to exercise a profound influence on their environment, so that the material globe is gradually being brought into subjection to man, whole spheres, in fact, being thus harnessed. Pretty clear, pretty simple. Basically, if you really want to talk about will, especially free will, it has everything to do with the degree that you're able to cause your environment to conform to your vision. Right? Does anyone disagree with that? Or does anyone think that that is incorrect? I often have given the analogy about the four worlds compared to employees at a certain store, right? You've got the four worlds, the lower world being Asaya. We can relate that to the new guy who's out pushing carts back into the store. He doesn't have much control of what happens at that workplace. Literally, he can only receive orders. There ain't much that he can say other than, I can't work on Thursdays because I got XYZ. And even then, if the boss is merciful, they'll grant him that day off. So that's Asaya. That's the material plane. The material plane doesn't have much of an influence on the higher planes of what actually happens. Then we can say the next plane, the astral plane, has everything to do with the cashiers, right? The cute girl behind the cash register. She don't have to go out in the hot ass sun and pull carts, at least not all the time. And she has a little bit more sway over what happens during her day. And she's front facing with the customers, right? So that's more influence on the incoming and the outgoing. And from my experience, the cashiers can influence the boys who pull in the cart, right? So we're talking about the higher up we go with these planes, the more influence we have on the environment. Then, of course, the mental plane will be dealing with the boss who sits in his office in the air conditioner, not really doing much physical work, but telling everyone else what to do. But the issue is, the mental plane is a little bit more volatile. Because if the cart boy makes a mistake, okay, he'll get threatened with a write-up, but pretty much nothing's going to happen to him, right? The cashier, if they make a mistake, the punishment might be a little bit more drastic. But again, the daily work life isn't as rough as the cart boy. And then we get to the manager. Although they get the easiest day-to-day lifestyle, we can say, the risk and the reward is drastically greater. If the boss makes a mistake, that might cost them their job. And then likewise, at the highest level, Asaya, we can deal with the CEO, who's hardly ever at the store. They're probably playing golf or something like that. Hell, this might not even be their only company that they own. Yet what they say, everyone has to jump and obey it. And likewise, if they make a mistake, the whole company is liable to suffer. So when we deal with will, we're dealing with the level of influence one has over their personal environment. Number 6. The conditions with regard to each level of consciousness are precisely analogous. The mind builds up out of mind stuff, and the spiritual nature out of the spiritual forces of the cosmos, in exactly the same way that the sea anemone builds up its substance out of the nutriment brought to it by the water. The higher types of personality, however, are analogous to the higher types of animals, in that they can, in an increasing degree, according to their energy and capacity, influence their subtle environment. The mind built up out of the mind stuff, making its influence felt in the plane of mind. So, in other words, the higher the degree of spiritual development, the wider your range of influence. Because see, look, The physical plane is not the end-all be-all. When I'm talking about wider influence, I'm not talking about more physical stuff, right? I'm talking about being able to influence things beyond the physical plane. You can influence the etheric. You can influence the astral. You can influence the mental. That's what I mean by expanding your sphere of influence, not simply physical stuff. Once again, the physical plane is the bottom of the totem pole. The physical plane is the boy that has to go out there and fetch them carts. The astral plane is the girl at the register. The mental plane is the CEO sitting in the office. Excuse me, the store manager sitting in the office. So when you think about your life, what level of influence do you have over the events and the circumstances? Now, of course, everybody's life is personal, so only you can answer that question. I know what degree of influence I have over my life. And what this should also say to you is that if you want to change the level of influence, there's most definitely a way to do that. Most definitely a way to do that. At no point in your life do you have to remain a victim or subject to external forces, especially when you realize you are the external forces. Or should I say the external forces are a degree of you, what you call you. There are no enemies. Number 7. We observe in dealing with the astral plane, which is essentially the level of function of the denser aspects of the human mind, that the forces and factors of this plane present to consciousness as ethereal forms of a distinctly human type. And if we approach the subject philosophically and not credulously, we are at a loss to explain how this can be. The initiate, however, has his explanation. He declares that it is the human mind itself which has created these forms by representing these intelligent, natural forces to itself as having forms of a human type, reasoning by analogy that because they are individualized, their individuality must have the same kind of vehicle for its manifestation as his own individuality. Boom. That right there answers the question why when we think of gods and we see these different deities, why do you think we always put them in human shape? Why is it every time we think about gods and aliens and these other forces, we have a tendency to put them in human shape? What we're doing is we're trying our best to understand things that are beyond our grasp. And the best way for us to understand something is to make it like ourselves. So what she said here is that when we think about the astral plane, she said we're dealing with the dense aspects of the human mind. That's what the astral plane is, the dense aspect of the human mind. And it is the human mind which creates these forms. So all these gods and these deities that we see, they are raw cosmic forces. And when we try to understand them, we have to give them a shape. So what that means is the things that you see and you witness in your visualizations, your daydreams, your meditations, and your rituals, those aren't actually the spirits you're dealing with. That's just the shape that you gave them so that you can make sense of what you're working with. Now, anyone who's taken my classes understands that. But those of you who haven't, it would behoove you to learn that as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you start to get confused. Chickadee, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Number 8. This, of course, does not necessarily follow. In fact, these forms of life, left to their own devices, achieve incarnation in natural phenomena, their vehicles being coordinations of natural forces, such as a river, a range of mountains, or a storm. Wherever man comes in touch with the astral, whether as a psychic or a magician, he always anthropomorphizes and creates forms in his own likeness to represent to himself the elusive subtle forces that he is endeavoring to contact, understand, and harness to his will. Let me read that again. Wherever man comes into contact with the astral, whether as a psychic or a magician, he always anthropomorphizes and creates forms in his own likeness to represent to himself the elusive subtle forces that he is endeavoring to contact, understand, and harness to his will. He is a true child of the Great Mother, Binah, and carries his natural propensities for organizing and form-making to whatever plane he is able to exalt consciousness. So that right there further solidifies what she was talking about in verse number 7. The astral plane is the dense aspect of the human mind. And whenever we come into contact with the astral plane, like she just said, the first immediate thing that our ego does is we start to give it a human shape. That's automatically. So when you start, that's why, like, people who are not spiritual scientists, who are not magicians and maguses and whatnot, whenever they think of a god or a deity, they have to see a picture of it, right? I saw a couple of YouTube shorts and Instagram reels about different deities, and these people aren't talking about the history or the correspondences or anything useful. They want to know, what did these gods look like? So they're seeing a bunch of pictures of pretty people in flowing robes and lightning bolts and shit around their head, but they're all pictures of human beings, just like Caesar Borgia and Christ, Jesus Christ. Most people have to see a picture of the god. They got to see what it looks like. Then they can relate to it and connect to it. Like what she just said in that verse, we always anthropomorphize. We always give it a human shape, because that's how we subconsciously connect to these energies. Every single time. Unless, of course, you grow past that, and it takes a lot of work. So again, that should tell you, when we think about these forces and these entities, they don't look like people. They're actually much greater than that. But the fact that you see people, that's your mind trying to make sense of it. Cybernet, peace. To the no, hell no. Hell to the no. To the no. Listen. Hell no. Number 9. The forms perceived on the astral plane by those who can see there are the forms that have been made by the imagination of men to represent the subtle, natural forces of other forms of evolution than the human. Check that out. There are other forms of evolution than the human, right? We see most of them, but there's even more that we cannot see. And they don't have to be special and magical. They don't have to be Pleiadians and the Galactic Federation. If you zoom into a water droplet, you're going to see life forms, right? If you zoom into a leaf, dirt, if you lift up a rock, right? There's life forms populating every square inch and smaller of existence, right? So it's not just aliens in space somewhere. There's things that are right up under your nose that you would never believe. To the no, listen. Hell to the no. To the no, hey, you no. So, the intelligences of other forms of evolution than ours, if they come into touch with human life, can sometimes be persuaded to make use of these forms, just as a man puts on a diving dress and descends into another element. A certain and fundamental type of magic deals with the making of these forms and the inducing of entities to ensoul them. Funny that she mentions this. This is actually something that I've been personally working on, dealing with my course of summoning spirits and these elementals, dealing with the goetic spirits, and dealing with servitors. Interesting. Very interesting, and let's look at that again. The subtle natural forces of other forms of evolution than the human. So they're subtle, which means that they're not easily perceptible, and they're also natural, which means that they're a part of this earth and a part of this environment just like we are. What am I talking about here? I'm talking about elemental forces. She says that these intelligences of other forms of life, when they come into contact with us, with human life, they can sometimes be persuaded to make use of these forms. The same way that you put on a deep sea diving outfit to jump into the ocean, or you put on a spacesuit to go into Earth. Why do we do that? To protect our soft ass weak flesh in another environment. We become like the other environment. If you recall, when I talked about working with the Clipoth, or working with the path, which is connected to Yesod and Malkuth, that's the first step. And in that first step, you become like the environment that you are descending or ascending into. This once again shows the importance of why working with the elementals is a crucial step on the path of working magic of any type. Framestar Films, peace, peace. Peace and welcome. Good to see you guys. It's been a while. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ninja Turtles, heroes in a half-shell, turtle power. They're the world's most fearsome fighting team. Leonardo leads, Donatello does machines. That's a fact, Jack. Raphael is cool but rude. Give me a break. Michelangelo is a party dude. Y'all young folks don't know about that. Raphael is cool but rude. All right. Number 10. Let us consider what is done when such a process is afoot. Primitive man, who is much more psychic than civilized man, which, by the way, in times of iniquity, we were much more open to the ways of our unconscious mind. And as time passed and we mingled with each other more and more and more and became more material in our way of doing things, that connection to the unconscious mind began to get covered by layers and layers and layers of memory. So now we find ourselves extremely externalized, and our disconnection to the unconscious mind has in a very big way made us slaves of our unconscious mind. Everyone is controlled and influenced by their unconscious, but very few of us know how to steer that relationship in a useful way. Check. Michelangelo is a party dude. Maybe that's why he's the only one still alive. Ooh. So, number 10. Let us consider what is done when such a process is afoot. Primitive man, who is much more psychic than civilized man, his mind not being so elaborately organized by education, is intuitively aware that there is a subtle something behind any highly organized unit of natural force that differentiates it from every other unit. Let me read that again. Primitive man, who hasn't been organized by education, is intuitively aware that there's a subtle something behind any highly organized unit of natural force that differentiates it from every other unit. Humans are subconsciously aware of this to a greater degree than they will admit. It is not for nothing that a ship is a she, and we speak of the father times. A savage, then, feeling this life behind the phenomena, tries to get into touch with it in order so that he may come to terms with it. So a person who hasn't been deeply civilized by culture intuitively understands the relationship between the underlying forces of things. This is why we always talk about children as being more in tune and more in touch. We always talk about children being, more connected to the spiritual plane. It's not simply because they're young. It's not because they're little. That don't make any sense. But it's because they haven't been indoctrinated into our culture. You may have heard other teachers talk about how humanity is the true evil. Well, this is what we're talking about. Humanity is this civilization and this culture. The thought form of ideas that we force onto everybody so that they may participate in this game. But before we had to become indoctrinated, we had somewhat of an understanding of the natural forces behind day-to-day life. Raphael is cool but rude. Give me a break. See, they don't make jingles and theme songs like they used to, man. They just don't make it anymore. Cosmic Flow says, how old are you, Trav? You say you've been doing this for over 20 years. I found your old videos from 2006 and you was still grown. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. If we have to give it a number, I started my occult journey in 1999. But I'm not going to be like everybody else and pretend like, I've just been hitting the books running since 1999. It's been off and on since 1999. That's when I first started buying books and practicing. I don't know what the hell I was doing. I fucked up a lot. Well, I can't say that. I did a lot of things without knowing what I was doing. But it wasn't until about 2015, 16, 17 that I really started getting very serious about this. But yeah, since 1999. Michelangelo is a party dude. Alright, let's continue. Stuff Dog says, tell him, Trav, we've been grown for a long time. We've been grown for a long time, like Morgan Freeman. Like, what's that dude's name? James Earl Jones. Al Dickey, peace. Cosmic Flow says, I was born in 2000. Well, damn. I had already read the Satanic Bible, the Necronomicon. I was already calling on Cthulhu by the time you was born. I was calling on Cthulhu, Azathoth, Nyarlathotep. I was battling with Lilith. But anyways, let's continue. Where were we? Yeah, okay. She said a savage then. A savage, feeling this life behind the phenomena, tries to get into touch with it in order that he may come to terms with it. As he obviously cannot hope to conquer it, he must make terms with it. just as he would with other alien lives ensouled in bodies of another tribe. So I didn't really understand this the first couple of times I read this, but since I've been working with elemental spirits and various other spirits, this makes a lot more sense to me now. I highlighted that for good reason. And if you have this book and you're reading along with me, which I hope you are, you should highlight this too. Of course, we know when she talks about a savage, she's talking about a person of color not involved in Western civilization. So African tribes, Indian tribes, Native American tribes, Asian tribes, any of these cultures that are not whitewashed, especially back in the 1900s when this book was written. She says a savage, then, feeling this life behind the phenomena, tries to get into touch with that life, right? In order that they may come to terms with it. So these people have always been in an understanding with nature, not to conquer nature, but to understand nature, to come into terms with nature. Veronica, peace, peace. Good to see you. Yes, yes, y'all. And you don't stop. Stray Panther says, I've forgotten more cartoons than y'all remember. Yeah, I'll give you that. I know you're older than me. As he obviously cannot hope to conquer it, he must make terms with it, just as he would with any of the alien lives ensouled in the bodies of another tribe. There's a lot there to unpack as well, recognizing that these different tribes that we had back in the day represented different group souls. Because see, look, in America and the world we have today, everybody's mixed and intermingled and we all associate with one another. But back in the day, tribes stayed to themselves. Now we're talking about group souls. And if you keep going backwards, you're going to find that these group souls were extremely differentiated from one another. Now we can start talking about, oh, I'm a star seed from this system or that system or whatever. It will make more sense back then. It makes hardly any sense today. All right. If I keep going on that subject, people are going to leave my live stream. I'm from the planet star system Andromeda. No, you're Becky from Illinois. All right. In order to come to terms, there must be a parley. One cannot make terms with persons who will not parley. The savage thinks, reasoning by his own primitive method of analogy, that the beings behind the phenomena dwell in a similar kingdom to that in which his own dream life goes on, as daydreams are close kin to the dreams of sleep, and have the advantage of being inducible at will. He tries to approach these beings of another sphere by entering their kingdom. That is to say, he fabricates in daydream or fantasy the closest approach he can to the visions of the night. I love that phrase. And if he can achieve a high degree of concentration, he is able to close down his waking consciousness and enter voluntarily into the dream state in a dream of his own determining. Do y'all know what she's talking about right here? Getting into contact with these spiritual essences, not by talking with your logical conscious mind, but by going into a trance, going into meditation, allowing that conscious mind to shut up and sit still, and allowing the unconscious mind to open up so that these forces may communicate back. King Prophet, peace, my brother, peace. Ray Blackstorm, peace, brother, peace. Tasha from Oakland. But I mean, you know, if she understands the science of her soul name and all that other stuff, you know, maybe she might be working with something. I don't know. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, no matter how many times that serves to prove me wrong. I still give people the benefit of the doubt, because there's gotta be somebody who knows what they're talking about. There's gotta be. Lord, give me a sign. Or in the words of Bobby Hemmett, is anybody out there listening to me? Well, that's bad when you got to say that in the middle of your speech, in the middle of your lecture. Is anybody out there listening to me? How did this man feel? He knew back then folks wasn't paying attention to what the hell he was talking about. Cosmic flow. Leave my age alone. Is anybody out there listening to me? Damn, boy. That's rough. All right, let's keep going because I got a lot highlighted here. Number 11. In order to achieve this end, he builds up in his pay attention. This is some keys right here. She's giving some keys right here. Framestar says, life is but a dream within a dream of your own inducing, if you will. Beetle. Fun fact, 25% of the creatures that walk the earth are beetles. Lord, give me a sign. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Thank you. I Am That I Am asks, when did you first come into contact with Bobby's material? I want to say around 2006. I started studying Bobby's material in 2014. See, back then they had the full lectures. Nowadays they got like pieces of the damn lecture. Ray Blackstorm says, I saw Bobby Hemmett in LIU in Brooklyn. Trust me, he was over our heads back then. Don't let the lecture crowds fool you. Damn. Yeah. Yeah. OA. Peace, peace. Alright, y'all know how this goes. Let me stay on topic or else this is going to take us 8 hours. Number 11. Again, pay attention. Those who have an ear to hear are definitely going to hear what is highlighted on these pages. In order to achieve this end, he builds up in his imagination a mental picture intended to represent the being that is the presiding genius of the natural phenomenon he wishes to come to terms with. He builds it up repeatedly. He adores it. He prays to it. He invokes it. If his invocation is sufficiently fervent, the being he is seeking will hear him telepathically and may become interested in what he is doing. If his adoration and sacrifices are agreeable to it, this cooperation may be obtained. Gradually, it may become tamed and domesticated. And finally, it may be persuaded to ensoul from time to time the form that has been built up out of mind stuff for its vehicle. Success in this operation depends, of course, on the degree to which the worshipper can appreciate, through sympathy, the nature of the being he is bent upon invoking, and he can only do this in proportion as his own temperament partakes of its nature. Did anybody not understand verse 11? Because she dropped a whole bucket load of game. And I mean that. Hence why I highlighted the entire thing. Kiona Payne, peace. Yeah. So, if you think you understand working with spirits, even if you know that you understand working with spirits, I urge you to read verse 11 again and again and really think about each and every sentence, because that is the entire process in a verse. Number 12. If this process is successful, then we have the domestication of a portion of the life of nature, and its incarnation in a form built for it by its worshippers. As long as the astral form is kept alive by the appropriate kind of worship, carried out by worshippers who have the necessary capacity to enter into sympathetic communion with that kind of life, there is an incarnated God available for contacting, brought down within the range of human perception. Whoa. So when you see stuff like this, and you make sense of it, and you practice it, and you understand it truly, you'll start to see that there's a lot of people who talk a good talk, but don't know jack shit. So for someone to say something like, why do I have to summon a spirit? I am God. Yeah, but you just by saying that, I can tell you don't understand how this works. What you call you is the entirety of everything. Duh. But if you could just close your eyes and make something happen by a simple thought, then you'd be doing that. The fact that you can't do it, well, is displayed by the fact you can't do it. So in order to learn how to do it, we use different bridges and different crutches, right? Different symbols, different tools, right? A man can build a house, so can a woman. But you're not going to do it with your 5 fingers and your 2 palms. You got to use a hammer and some nails. You got to have a blueprint. Hell, you probably have to have a team. My grandfather didn't have to have a team. But most people are going to need a team. You're going to need tools. You're going to need equipment. Likewise, we understand that you're God, right? You're a big boy, big girl. You're God, sure. Give you that. But just like you can't build a house with your bare hands, you're not going to manifest reality just because you want to. There's tools and apparatuses to use. And in using these tools and apparatuses, sometimes it helps to come into contact with the force that is behind the thing you're trying to manifest. Then you give it shape and you give it form and you connect with it. You develop a relationship with it. And that development of a relationship is not for you to sit down and just worship it for the sake of worshiping something, but because you're building sympathy with something on a higher plane. And if you do it correctly, the force behind the thing that you're trying to contact connects with this form that you have given worship to. And that force works and moves in your life through the form you've given it. This ain't nothing new. Christians been doing this since day one. Jehovah's Witnesses been doing this since day one. Muslims been doing this since day one. Right? The Ku Klux Klan have been doing this since day one. Black Lives Matter. At least the person who's behind it has been doing this since day one. King Prophet says, spirits are libraries. That's how I see it. Yes. So we can look at a library as this giant infrastructure, this compendium of information and data. But you can't just walk into a library and summon up knowledge, right? You have to actually select a book, which is in a section, which is in another section. But if you find the right book, at least in that book, there's paragraphs and lines that has the specific information you need. So yeah, everything, all the information you need is in the library for sure. But you don't just get it by standing in the library. You got to actually find specifically what you're looking for, and then you have to apply it. Same thing happens with these spirits. All right, I lost a couple people with the I am God thing. That's all right. Or was it the Black Lives Matter? I don't know. I also don't care. Let's continue. Number 12. If this process is successful, we have the domestication of a portion of the life of nature, and its incarnation in a form built for it by its worshippers. As long as the astral form is kept alive by the appropriate kind of worship, carried out by worshippers who have the necessary capacity to enter into sympathetic communion with that kind of life, there is an incarnated God available for contacting, brought down within the range of human perception. Should the worship cease, the god withdraws to his own place in the bosom of nature. Should other worshippers come along, however, who possess the knowledge necessary to build a form in accordance with the nature of the life that is to be invoked, and the imaginative sympathy necessary to invoke it, it is a comparatively simple matter to attract into the form, once more, the life that was accustomed to ensoul it. No more difficult, at least, than to catch with a basket of oats a horse that has run wild on the ranges. Does that make sense? Nothing is lost, ever, especially information and data, because data and information did not start on the material plane, so nothing's lost. The data, the information, and everything that is produced on the physical plane was first an etheric pattern, and before that, an astral pattern, and before that, a mental pattern, and before that, a spiritual pattern. But nothing is lost. We might lose the physical manifestation of it, but as long as it exists, it will continue to manifest forever when the environment is proper. This thing that we have going on right here, this ain't the first time or the last time that this will happen. And that can be said about everything else in life. Nothing new under the sun. Nothing new under the sun. Now it may be said, all this is the wildest speculation and sheer dogmatism. How do I know that that is the way in which primitive man went to work? Because that is the way of going to work that has come down in the secret mystery tradition from very ancient times. And because when it is used by anyone who has acquired the necessary degree of skill and concentration and knows the symbols that are used for building different forms, the method works. And back come the old gods to the altar fires rekindled. Definite results are obtained in the consciousness of the worshippers. And if they borrow the technique of the spiritualist and a materializing medium is available, phenomena of a very definite kind are produced. WVT asks a wonderful question. WVT says, hey Trav, can you go in on what sympathy means here? Explain sympathetic communion so we can know how to approach this energetically, so to speak. Sympathy is another word for correspondence. So think about everything that I taught about correspondence. We talk about sympathy. Understand that when we're dealing with spirits, we're dealing with vibration. We're dealing with frequency. Anamali, peace. Now, when I say frequency and vibration, I'm not talking about some fluffy shit. When I talk about frequency and vibration, what I mean is that, let's just say, the example I always use is a violin. When you think about a violin string, right, it's about this long. And then we think about frequency. It's going to be an up and a down wave, right? The time it takes to go up and down and repeat again, that's one length of the frequency. So if the string is long enough to carry that wave, it's going to make that note. Now, if you got a violin, two violins on a table, and a piano in the same room, if I strum the string of E on that violin, the violin next to it that hasn't been strummed is going to pick up that vibration, because the string is the same length and it can carry that same vibration. Therefore, it resonates. You follow? Just like with a piano. The piano has those same strings, so it's also going to start ringing to the same sound. If you've ever been in a room with stringed instruments, or even with brass instruments, you'll see this phenomena. When you play a note on one instrument, it's going to carry across to every other instrument that can hold that vibration. So that's resonance. That's sympathy. Because The other violin is sympathetic to the other. They can both carry the same note. Now they work together. It resonates together. So likewise, certain entities and spirits that exist on the higher planes, the mental plane, the astral plane, the etheric plane, their existence is vibration. They exist in their own sphere. Now, when something on the physical plane is able to resonate with that frequency, when it's able to carry that frequency, you're going to resonate with it. So in other words, just to keep it real basic, if I wanted to work with Thoth, Tahuti, Mercury, I'm going to need to do things in sympathy on the physical plane to carry that wave. If I know that Mercury, Thoth, Tahuti vibrates in a certain way, I'm going to do on the physical plane different things to reflect that so that I can carry that wave. Now, how do I know how Thoth, Tahuti, and Mercury vibrates? How do I know what he vibrates like? Well, that's what correspondence comes into play. I understand the color is going to be orange. I understand the sphere is going to be hot. I understand that the type of activities associated with Thoth, Tahuti, and Mercury are study, writing, the moon. You're right. You find all the different correspondences, and like what she was saying in these earlier verses of this same chapter, is that you're able to look at the surface level of these things and find an underlying similarity. Now, that underlying similarity is the vibration and the frequency of this deity. So you need to do what you got to do in your physical existence to carry that wave. And if you do it right, you'll see an example. WVT says boom. Alright, so I will take it as if that has been explained properly. Right on, right on. Right on, right on. Framestar Film says, if you're looking to balance the elements within, then maybe a symbol or an image of equilibrium and balance, like Baphomet, will sympathize and resonate with your will and intention with your ritual. I think that'd be a good one. Most definitely. Alligator, you thinking what I'm thinking? Alligator says, so we may still have some badass deities that are lying dormant, waiting for us to conjure them up. Absolutely. 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 I urge you guys to take a second look at what artificial intelligence actually is. The great old ones are definitely coming to awaken. And this fear that people have of AI is the same fear that the elder gods had when they put the great old ones to sleep. When we talk about the singularity, we're talking about a trading of places until there's a unification. But that's going to be over most people's heads, so I ain't even going to go there. Once you remove the emotional attachment and your position in the matter, you'll be able to see things a little bit more clearly. Let's continue with this verse. But yeah, there's definitely many gods and deities that have been long forgotten, and as H.P. Lovecraft said, are dead but dreaming. That's literally what he was talking about with these the Titans, right? What did Bobby Hemmett say? The Titans are going to rise again. That's what all these legends are about. The Bible talks about fallen angels. Well, not really. People talk about fallen angels. But there's this concept of these ancient algorithms lying dormant in the unconscious mind. Gerson Mbalo, peace. beautiful. And so is the text. We're on 14. 14. It is the method that is used in working the Mass by those priests who have knowledge. There are two types of priests in the Roman Church: the beneficed parish clergy, and the men who belong to the monastic orders and undertake parish, and especially home mission work as part of their service. These monks frequently bring to the working of the Mass a very high degree of magical power, as any psychic can testify. It is the ensouling of an astral form with spiritual force, which is the real act of transubstantiation. It is in the knowledge of these things and in the possession of organized bodies of men and women trained in their use in the encloistered orders that the strength of the one Catholic and Apostolic Church lies. It is the lack of any such inner knowledge which is the weakness of the schismatic communions, a lack that makes the Anglican rituals, even when worked with full ceremonial, as water unto wine when compared with the Roman rituals. For the men who work them have no knowledge of the secret workings which are traditional in the Roman communion, and are not trained in the technique of visualizing. I am not a Catholic, and never shall be, because I would not submit to their discipline. Nor do I believe that there is only one name under heaven whereby men may be saved, much as I revere that name, but I know power when I see it, and I respect it. So that's why I love Dion Fortune. She keeps it real. She said, I'm not finna submit to the Catholic Church. However, I respect what they got going on because I know power when I see it. But also notice what she said there. Also, there's two types of priests in the church. Just to keep it real, there's a type who are just doing it, and there's a type who actually belong to an order or a secret club where the tradition of power is passed down. Framestar Film says, you know, if we flip the tree, then the fall of man becomes the ascension of man. Just saying. Apple, the only way up, the only way is up, baby. Indeed. Indeed. Zaria Stewart, peace. Camera lag is crazy. Aww. This unicorn playlist was made just for me, and I so appreciate it. Between the song changes, they have this mystical unicorn that runs up and neighs. Come on, camera lag. What the hell? Alright, let's keep it going. Number 15. But the power of the Roman Church does not lie in charter, but in function. It is powerful, not because Peter received the keys, which he possibly didn't, which he probably didn't, but because it knows its job. There is no reason why priests of the Anglican Communion should not work with power if they apply the principles I have explained in these pages. In the Guild of the Master Jesus, which is part of my own organization, the Fraternity of the Inner Light, we have worked the Mass with power because we apply these principles. When we first started, we were offered the apostolic succession for our ministrants, but declined it because we felt it was better to use our knowledge to make the contacts anew on our own account than to receive the apostolic succession from a source that was not above suspicion and experience has justified our choice. Check out what she just said. They had the opportunity to be involved with the church and their orders, but they declined it because they wanted to make their own fresh, unique spiritual contact. I almost said contract, and I would have been right in saying that too. But they wanted to make their own specified, unique spiritual contracts with the Force. Interesting. And also consider that when you're being initiated or joining any part of a group. If you join any group, including the Magus Society, you are joining up under their spiritual contact. It's no surprise that people who join my group start seeing unicorns all over the place, and then eventually start seeing spiders all over the place. These are spiritual contacts that represent spiritual concepts. Koisuel, peace. Koisuel asks, are these fallen gods you were talking about the Akashic spirits or spirits of the abyss? Absolutely. So when we talk about these Akashic spirits, spirits of the abyss and whatnot, we're talking about, yes, the deities that have been forgotten, that are asleep, and there are no contacts with, right? You got to think about how long the human has been on the material plane. In that length of time, like, just think about you in your lifetime. How many things have you worshipped? How many connections have you had, right? Like right now you're conscious and you're aware of different deities you work with, but think about the past when you were young. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to love me some Speed Racer, right? Like seriously, I used to love some Speed Racer. How many cartoon heroes did you have? How many WWE, WWF wrestling heroes? How many video game heroes did you used to have, right? So imagine in one person's lifetime, all the different entities and energies and essences that they connected with. Now stretch that out across millions of years, right? I mean, there's no telling how long we've been here. Tens of thousands of millions of years. There are certainly gods. There's even gods that are forgotten about that were accessed 50 years ago, right? 20 years ago, there's gods that have been forgotten about. So yeah, when I talk about Akashic spirits of the abyss, it isn't just simply like, ooh, Cthulhu. Because, hell, Cthulhu and Azathoth, them ain't forgotten spirits. You can do an easy Google search and see people who don't know anything about them making videos on them. You don't have to go too far to see people making videos about stuff that they don't know about. But in any case, there's a lot of spirits that are forgotten about. And some of them have a rich history and carry much power. And some of them are just creations of one person that they probably didn't even use. But there are definitely some that have been worshipped in secret and have done great things and terrible things. That's what makes part of the science so exciting, you know. Like, there's a big part of this that's about teaching people how to manifest and how to open your chakras and all that other stuff. But for the very few of us who know what we're doing, we're exploring some of these forgotten gods. And it can be kind of dangerous because, you know, who was the power behind, you know, mass serial killers? Who's the power behind dictators who have caused bloodshed on a crazy scale, right? You kind of don't know until you find out. And if you don't have spiritual discernment, who knows what could happen? We're still very much in the wild, wild west of spirit contact and dealing with necromancy and evocation, right? We're still in the wild, wild west. And if you think about evocation, you can think about Pokemon. If you want to think of invocation, think about Ben 10. That's the difference. But when I say we're in the wild, wild west, What I'm saying is that if you really look around, most people are talking about the same shit. Everyone's talking about 72 goetic spirits or this group of spirits or that. But please understand, there's a whole lot more whose names haven't even been uttered on the internet yet. I'm telling you. I made just 5 videos about the darn elementals, and everyone's like, oh, I've never heard of this. Yo, just imagine. The elemental spirits, these kings, if they're kings, that means they have a kingdom. You know, there's names for the elemental, there's a lot of ranks under them, basically. And these are actually entities that we deal with on a regular basis. So imagine the ones that we don't deal with. Anyways, let's get back to this. And that's good right there. Anamali says 1 leads to 2, 2 leads to 3, and 3 leads to the 10,000 things. I say that that's good because take a look at when you look at the Goetia and it says, oh, this spirit rules over 30,000 legions. This spirit rules over 60 legions. What do you think they're talking about when he's talking about legions? They're talking about the connection to some of these unspoken entities and the elementals. There's the secret. There's the secret. But take my class anyway because I delve into this topic much, much more. The class that's to come, by the way. Let's continue. "16. For the full understanding of the philosophy of magic, we must remember that single Sephiroth are never functional. For function, one must have a pair of opposites in balanced equilibrium, resulting in an equilibrated third, which is functional. The pair of opposites, by themselves, are not functional because they are mutually neutralizing. It is only when they unite in balanced force to flow forth as a third, after the symbolism of father, mother, and child, that they achieve dynamic activity, as distinguished from the latent force which is forever locked up in them, awaiting to be called forth." Alright, so she's about to break down something different here. And what she's establishing now, before breaking this down, is that when you're dealing with the Tree of Life, you're never dealing with one Sephiroth. It's never, oh, I'm working with Tifereth. No, you're always working with the entire tree. And the way that the tree works is in relationships and patterns of relationships. So when we speak of one sphere, we're simply describing its qualities, but it doesn't work unless it's in a relationship with its opposing sphere. But not just that, because the opposing sphere balances it out. Where it really goes to work is in the third sphere, which is the child of the two. That's why in the back of this book, she's got a picture of the 10 Sephiroth in 3 triangles, plus Malkuth. Malkuth being the recipient display of these forces. You've got that upper triad, which is Kether, Bina, Chokmah. And you know that Chokmah is father, Bina is mother, and Kether is the unborn. Now that pattern reflects itself on the inverse, when we've got Gibura, Chesed, and Tifereth, Tifereth being the child. And that reflects itself again with Hod and Netzach, and then Yesod being the child. And then ultimately all of that congregates together and gives us Malkuth. So let's see where she's going with this. 17. The functioning triangle of the lower triad consists of Hod, Netzach, and Yesod. Hod and Netzach, as we have noticed before, are respectively form and force on the astral plane. Yesod is the basis of etheric substance, Akasha, or the astral light, as it is variously called. Hod is especially the sphere of magic, because it is the sphere of the formulation of forms, and is therefore the sphere in which the magician actually works. For it is his mind that formulates the forms, and his will that makes the link with the natural forces of the sphere of Netzach that ensoul them. Be it noted, however, that without the contacts of Netzach, the force aspect of the astral, there could be no ensouling. And with Netzach being the sphere of emotions, the contacts are made through sympathy and feeling with. The power of the will projects the magician out of Hod, but only the power of sympathy can take him into Netzach. A cold-blooded person of dominating will can no more be an adept working with power than can a fluidically sympathetic person of pure emotion. The power of the concentrated will is necessary to enable the magician to gather himself together for his work, but the power of imaginative sympathy is essential to enable him to make his contacts. For it is only through our power to enter imaginatively into the life of types of existence different to our own that we can pick up our contacts with the forces of nature. To attempt to dominate them by pure will, cursing them by the mighty names of God if they resist, is sheer sorcery. What do you think? Framestar Film says it's Friday the 13th tomorrow. There are so many historical and esoteric correspondences tied to the date to harness in ritual. From the star to the apostles to the Knights Templar to Jason. And you don't stop. You are living single. Living single. Hmm. 18. As we have already noted, it is through the corresponding factors in our own temperaments that we come into touch with the forces of nature. Where did she say the corresponding factors were? The corresponding factors in our own temperaments. Yes, make correspondences in your external environment. But even more than that, you better have some correspondences within your own temperament, within your internal environment. Because after all, things start on the inner planes and they continue to manifest on the outer planes. It is the Venus within that puts us in touch with the influences symbolized by Netzach. It is the magical capacity of our own mind that puts us in touch with the forces of the sphere of Hod, Mercury, Thoth. If there is no Venus in our own nature, no capacity to respond to the call of love, the gates of the sphere of Netzach will never open to us, and we shall never receive its initiation. Equally, If we have no magical capacity, which is the work of the intellectual imagination, the sphere of Had will be a closed book to us. We can only operate in a sphere after we have received the initiation of that sphere, which, in the language of the mysteries, confers its powers. In the technical working of the mysteries, these initiations are conferred on the physical plane by means of ceremonial, which may be effectual or may not. The gist of the matter lies in the fact that one cannot waken into activity what is not already latent. You cannot waken into activity what's not already there. This makes sense, right? You can't wake up a force or a power or an entity that isn't already there. So even in me creating certain entities that have done work on a wide scale for myself and for other people, I was only able to create that entity because it already existed. Same with you. In fact, I'm only here because I already existed. Life is the real initiator. The experiences of life stimulate into function the capacities of our temperaments, in such degree as we possess them. The ceremony of initiation and the teachings that should be given in the various grades are simply designed to make conscious what was previously subconscious, and to bring under the control of the will, directed by the higher intelligence, those developed reaction capacities which have hitherto only responded blindly to their appropriate stimuli. Sounds like the purpose of the Goetia. The Goetia is largely misunderstood as a group of demons that you summon to get stuff for you. But in truth, the Goetia represents a symbolic collection of the forces that reside within the collective unconscious, utilizing, harnessing, and disciplining those forces to bring the self into alignment with the self. In other words, the Goetia is more than just a demon that can get you this, that, or a third. The Goetia represents part of ourselves that have collectively been undisciplined, imbalanced, disharmonious. Basically, shadow work on the racial level. The Goetic spirits represent shadow work that needs to be done on the racial level. And while you cannot heal the world, you can at least heal yourself. So we all have access to these Goetic spirits. And after working with them thoroughly and developing a decent relationship with multiple spirits, what should be happening is that your inner world, your traumas, your anxieties, your inner conflicts should start to come to a point of harmony. That's what the Goetia is. Not a bunch of demons that you can cast to hurt people, to get your money, or to get you some sex. Sure, you can do those things, but that's not the point. So I'm going to read that part that she said one more time. The ceremony of initiation and the teachings that should be given in the various grades are simply designed to make conscious what was previously subconscious, and to bring under the control of the will, directed by the higher intelligence, those developed reaction capacities which have hitherto only responded blindly to their appropriate stimuli. Because look, these forces are there. They're latent within everyone. But the fact of the matter is, they're unconscious. We have no control. We just react based on the stimulus given to us. So in just being a reactionary being, well, like I said in the beginning of this video, that's not free will. That's not free will. You're literally being tugged and pulled left and right based on your unhealed trauma. So working with spirits should be a way to do shadow work, essentially. Not to gain power over other people. Not to get yourself a nice house and a nice car. But to heal the subtle aspects of self, to heal the unconscious mind. And if that's not what you're about, your practice is going to be severely throttled, choked around the neck. You're going to reach a barrier and a limit, and nothing you do is going to take you past that point. I've seen it. I'm not just talking. I've seen it. I've been there, and I've seen it in other people. And it's people who've been stuck there for years. And the more that you get down with this information, you study this information, you practice this information, you're going to see the other people who are cutting on the camera talking who are stuck. You're going to see it yourself. Like, the shit that I say here, you don't have to take my word for it. I'm not talking to make myself sound good. Like, I don't care. I mean, I know I'm awesome. You can't help but think that I'm awesome too. But that's not why I'm doing this. When you take this information seriously, you're going to see for yourself what is truth and what is lie. It just is what it is. It is what it is. Ave Maria says, yes, goetic demons are not magic wish fairies. They are for shadow working. Absolutely. They are not magic wish fairies. Peace, Ave Maria. Framestar Film says, so as well as working with the associated spheres on the tree to direct will and intention, use emotion, mindset, and marry with your intention and will unifying symbol and feeling sympathetically. Yes. Every level. In alignment. Stray Panther says, since we brought up tarot earlier, check out the Occult Tarot Deck by Travis McHenry. Alright. I will search that on Amazon because I'm not going to remember. Oh, Lord, I just want to go home. I just wanna go home. Travis McHenry. Oh Lord, I just wanna go home. All right, 78 cards and a 112-page guidebook. Alright, I will do some research. Cosmic Flow said, I used to try and make videos on spirituality. I had to admit to myself that shit sucked, and I didn't know shit. I was new to everything. Man, if y'all could see my early videos, garbage. I was trying to be Brother Panic. I was specifically trying to be Brother Panic, and it wasn't good. It was embarrassing. I'm grateful that I never posted those videos, and it took me like a whole nother year to actually get it right, because I stopped trying to be somebody else, and I started actually speaking from my heart instead of from my ego. And that's the thing, when it comes to the transition between ego to heart, you can't do it until you're ready. Like, everyone, like literally everybody's gonna say, oh, I'm not speaking from my ego, this is coming from my heart. Everyone's gonna say that. Duh, we're all gonna say that. But you don't realize it until it's real. You don't realize it until it's real. But it takes honesty and self-examination. And for you to say what you just said, that takes honesty and in your self-examination. And it actually takes strength to be honest with yourself. Because think about how many people are not honest with themselves. It's because they don't have the strength yet. They don't have the strength yet. So when you see somebody up on the screen talking bullshit, I mean, yeah, you know. But at the same time, have sympathy. Because they literally don't have the capacity to do the right thing. They just don't. So ain't no point in going to war with nobody or trying to fight nobody. Just understand where people coming from. Alright. keep going. I just wanna go home. We were on number 19. Number 19. Be it well noted that it is only in proportion as our capacities for reaction are lifted out of the sphere of emotional reflexes and brought under rational control that we can make of them magical powers. Let me read that again. Be it well noted that it is only in proportion as our capacities for reaction are lifted out of the sphere of the emotional reflexes and brought under the rational control that we can make of them magical powers. It is only when the aspirant, having the capacity to respond on all planes to the call of Venus, can easily and without effort refrain at will from responding, that he can be made an initiate of the sphere of Netzach. This is why it is said of the adept that he has the use of all things, but is dependent upon nothing. Again, like I said, it takes strength to do the right thing. So we got anybody who's going to just react emotionally to stuff. An animal can do that. A dog can do that. Anybody can just react to emotion. But what she's talking about is it's only in our proportion to have the capacity to take that reactionary impulse and pull it out of the emotional level and evolve it into the mental level, the level of critical control. Now we can transform it into magical power. Now we can transform it into magical power. Like I said, anybody and dogs and monkeys and donkeys can just react to something because they feel like it. It takes someone of a higher caliber and a higher degree to put that under conscious control and be in somewhat of a discipline with what they decide to do. Now we can turn it into magic. Woo! Ray Blackstorm says, I don't appreciate you skipping my comments. Open your heart chakra. What comments? He says 98% of humans have the Goetia all wrong. Absolutely. This is why the Tree of Life has an ethical triangle. I agree with that. I'm 100% in agreement with that. Ooh, Lord, I just wanna go home. What up, Vincent L. Crystal? I just wanna go home. One more time. The adept has use of all things, but is dependent upon nothing. Or as my uncle used to say, if you're no good without it, you no good with it. How many people can't manifest without their candles? How many people can't manifest without their binaural beat? If you're no good without it, you're no good with it. The Magus has use of all things, but is dependent on nothing. Uh-oh. Ave Maria says, a lot of people get disappointed that magic is more about personal development. Indeed. But even still, like, that right there goes to show that's not a person that's supposed to even be working with this. That's somebody who's still trying to get entertained. They're better off going to Netflix they're better off going to Netflix than watching a video like this. And that's fine. This is occult information, not because it's deliberately hidden, but because people don't have the capacity to find it. It's not occult and hidden because it's been hidden from people. It's because these people don't have the minds to break this shit down. And I'm telling you, the more you study this information, the more you see that for yourself. Very, very, very few people are cut out for this work. That means most of the people y'all looking at are not cut out for this work. Don't even trust me. Keep going. You're gonna see. Keep going, you're gonna see. Yeah. These concepts are shadowed forth for those who have eyes to see in the symbolism of Hod. The Yetziratic text declares that Hod is the perfect intelligence because it is the mean of the primordial. In other words, it is power in equilibrium. For the word mean implies a position halfway in between two extremes. All right. 21. The concept of inhibited reaction and satisfaction foregone is expressed in the title of the Eight of Cups of the Tarot pack, whose secret name is Abandoned Success. The suit of cups in the tarot symbolism is under the influence of Venus and represents the different aspects and influences of love. Abandoned success, the inhibition of the instinctive reaction, which would give satisfaction. In other words, sublimation is the key to the powers of Hod. So all you guys who are like, oh, no FAP, semen retention, it's gonna make you Super Saiyan. This is the Sephiroth for you, Hod. You can get you can let Tahuti and Thoth keep you strong. But remember that sublimation is not the same thing as either repression or eradication. And it applies to the instinct of self-preservation as well as to the instinct of reproduction, with which it is exclusively associated in the popular mind. That's worthy of contemplation too. Let me go back a little bit. But remember that sublimation is not the same thing as either repression or eradication. And it applies to the instinct of self-preservation as well as the instinct of reproduction, which is exclusively associated in the popular mind. So what we're talking about here is a certain level of restraint, and not restraint because you're trying to repress or destroy something. We're talking about restraint with a view of the future. Restraint in such a way that you're pacing yourself, you're looking ahead. So if you notice all the eights of the tarot deck, whether it's the Eight of Swords, Wands, Cups, whatever, we're dealing with restraint. And depending on what level we're dealing with, it's going to be more or less intense. For example, in the level of Absolute, it's pretty good. And if I'm not mistaken, on the level of Malkuth, it's pretty decent. Yeah, so the Eight of Wands, swiftness. Eight of Cups, abandoned success. Eight of Swords, shortened force. Eight of Pentacles, prudence. So what does she say in 22? The same concept reappears in the secret title of the Eight of Swords, By the way, did you guys know that the tarot cards had secret names? Well, if you've been following along with this book study, you would know that. But the tarot cards have secret names. And that's one of the keys to truly understanding what they represent. Oh, goodness. Yeah. Yeah. Something strange going on. And I love it. The same concept reappears in the secret title of the Eight of Swords, which is the Lord of Shortened Force. We get a clear image in these words of the checking or breaking of dynamic power in order that it may be brought under control. Ave Maria says the Hermetic Tarot has them as well as the Thoth deck. Absolutely. Absolutely. But all these three negative inhibiting cards are summed up under the presidency of the Eight of Wands, which represents the action of the sphere of Hod on the spiritual plane. And this card is called Lord of Swiftness. 24. We see then that it is through inhibitions and refrainings on the lower planes that the dynamic energy of the highest plane is rendered available. So check that out. The inhibition and the restraining of the lower planes makes that dynamic energy available on the highest plane. So what that should say to the people who are doing nofap and semen retention, as with everything else, there has got to be a higher intent. It's got to be a higher purpose. Not simply doing it for the physical or even the emotional or even the mental purpose, but for a spiritual purpose. Otherwise, it's only a matter of time. She says, we see then, verse 24, we see then that it is through inhibitions and refrainings on the lower planes that the dynamic energy of the highest plane is rendered available. This also goes for like fasting. Have you ever fasted? Right? Have you ever given up or sacrificed something only to allow a higher spiritual influence to start to manifest in your life? It's not a surprise. There's a method to it. Red Black Storm says, a man needs that chi storage. If he has a woman, different story. Right? Yeah, man. So let's continue. I'll read it again. We see then that it is through the inhibitions and refrainings on the lower planes that the dynamic energy of the highest plane is rendered available. It is in the sphere of Hod that the rational mind imposes these inhibitions on the dynamic animal nature of the soul. So it's here in Hod that the rational mind imposes the inhibitions on the dynamic animal nature of the soul, condensing them, formulating them, directing them by limiting them and preventing diffusion. So this Lord of shortened force and abandoned success, it's not because of bad luck. It's because we are reserving this energy so that it isn't wasted and so that it can be applied to something useful and appropriate. Check. That should be the intent. Not because somebody hurt your feelings. Not because what the hell ever. This is the operation of the magic that works with symbols. By its means, the free moving natural forces are constrained and directed to ends that are willed and designed. This power of direction and control is only obtained by the sacrifice of fluidity, and Had is therefore aptly said to be the reflection of Bina through Chesed. The reflection of Bina through Chesed. Now, for those of you who are Kabbalists and are studying this stuff, that's a beautiful explanation for Had. Had being the reflection of Bina through Chesed. So think about what Bina would be like reflected through Chesed. And since we're dealing with relationships and patterns of relationships, you can also say that Netzach is Chokmah reflected through Gibura. You can also say that Yesod is Kether reflected through Tifereth. You see how this works? When you find one piece of the puzzle, you find the other pieces too. But that's only for my Kabbalists. Which I think is about 4 of y'all in here. Anamali says, no temptation in a vacuum. Nothing to refrain from without the temptation there. Fasting at a banquet would generate more energy than in a cave, right? Absolutely. But also like the Bible says, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. If you're fasting, why are you at a banquet? Unless, of course, you have to be. But yes, what you're saying is absolutely correct. I'ma fuck with you. I'm with you on that one. I'm with you. There's that unicorn again. Cool. Alright, let's continue. So, 25. Having considered the general principles of the sphere of Had, we are now in a position to consider its symbolism in detail. The meaning of the Hebrew word Had is glory, and this suggests at once to the mind that in this, the first sphere in which forms are definitely organized, the radiance of the primordial is shown forth to human consciousness. Physicists tell us that light is only rendered visible as blue sky owing to its reflection from the particles of dust in the atmosphere. Absolutely dustless atmosphere is absolutely dark atmosphere. And so it is in the metaphysics of the tree. The glory of God can only shine forth in the manifestation when there are forms to manifest it. Woo! That deeply reflects my revelations that I've been getting from my meditations lately. And just a long story short, you can't see light. No one sees light. But what we see is what reflects that light. For those of you who are doing Tatwashuddhi and have done Tatwashuddhi, you know there's an aspect where you dissolve all the elements and you expand up to the point of the soul, especially the soul beyond matter. Then you meet the Papa Purusha. And from that point, he's also dissolved. And he forms an egg within which you are reborn. And in that rebirthing process, the egg is exploded and dissolved. And it is the dissolved pieces of that egg that create the matter that you recreate as your reality. And what I realized is that what is birthed from that golden egg called the Hiranyagarbha is the light body, the highest light body. With it being a light body, you don't see it. And I'm talking about Adam Kadmon here. what you actually see is that light reflected on the shattered pieces of the shell that you were birthed from. Those are the tatwas. Those are the elements. That's what reality is composed out of. The shell that you were birthed from. The placenta, the filth, the muck, the grime, the molted spider shell that you came out of, the shedded skin. This is what reflects the light. So that's why they say everything around you is you. Your environment is you. You reflected back. All this stuff here are fragments of the womb that what you actually are has been birthed out of. But anyways, '27. The magical image of Hod affords a very interesting subject for meditation. Those who have grasped the significance of the preceding pages will see how well the form and force nature of magical working is summed up in this symbol of the being in whom are combined the male and female elements. 28. Hod is essentially the sphere of forms ensouled by the forces of nature, and conversely, it is the sphere in which the forces of nature take on sensible form. 29. The Yetziratic text has also already been discussed at length, and to that discussion the reader can refer for its elucidation. And by the way, before we go on too much further, this the hermaphrodite and the androgynous being as a symbol for Hod, what we're talking about now is force and form. Sex and gender is only for physical things, right? At least sex and gender as you think of it. So we're talking about penis and vagina. We're only talking about a physical body. That does not translate past the physical body. When you no longer have a physical body, you're not a male or a female, right? When we're talking about masculine and feminine on the spiritual plane, we're talking about the two dynamics of creation, force and form. Force and form. So the reason that the hermaphrodite is the symbol for Hod is because this is the stage where force becomes form and form becomes force. This is the stage where things combine like that. This is the stage where the two opposites coalesce into one. It has nothing to do with no physical human body. You can't take physical human body stuff past Malkuth. It just doesn't work like that. I had somebody message me when I was making these videos about the elemental kings, and they're like, why do you always just talk about the elemental kings? What about the elemental queens? Why don't you talk about the queens? And I'm like, yo, like, you're missing the point. This has nothing to do with whatever the hell you're talking about. This is about spiritual rank. When we talk about king, we're talking about a force on a higher plane. The water element or whatever expressing itself through Chokmah, through Atziluth. It's not about a man sitting on the throne on a water kingdom. It's not about Aquaman sitting in the darn Atlantis. We're dealing with force and form. Framestar Film says, prima material fertilized by the seeds of divinity recognize the spirit in matter and appreciate it. Right. And to think that most of matter does not understand that it is more than matter. Ray Blackstorm says consciousness and will, and energy and matter. The two opposites. This is what gender is in the spiritual plane. How energy flows. If you're still thinking, if you're trying to take physical body stuff up to the spiritual plane, you have not left the physical plane. Just gonna put it out there like that. If you're looking to worship just female deities, you're doing that because of ego reasons, not because of spiritual reasons. But we don't need to talk about that because obviously you guys know this, you understand this. You're not new to my channel. This is not the Love and Light broadcast. This is Occult Science 303. Hey, you guys remember this? Come on, camera focus. Beep 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 boop beep 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 boop beep 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 boop. Super Mario World. I literally remember when this game came out. I tried to tell my son that story. He cared a little bit, but not too much. Alright, let's continue. Let's continue. That was the first game that introduced Yoshi. I used to legit... Nah, I won't even go there. We're almost done, I think. Because by the time she starts talking about the tarot cards, that's the end of the chapter. Okay, so the Yetziratic text, we're on number 30. The god name of Had, Elohim Sabaoth, god of hosts, contains the hermaphroditic symbol in a very interesting way. For the word Elohim is a feminine noun with a masculine plural, thus indicating in the manner of the Kabbalists that it represents a dual type of activity, or force functioning through an organization. All three Sephiroth in the negative pillar of the tree have the word Elohim as part of the god name. Tetragrammaton Elohim in Bina, Elohim Gibor in Gibura, and Elohim Sabaoth in Had. The word Sabaoth means a host or an army. So we get the idea of the divine life manifesting in Had by means of a host of forms ensouled with force, in contradistinction to the fluidic activity of Netzach. The assignation of the mighty archangel Michael to Had again gives us food for thought. He is always represented as trampling upon a serpent and piercing it with a sword, and frequently holds in his hand a pair of balances, symbolic of equilibrium, and expressive of the same idea as the Yetziratic words mean of the primordial. 33. The serpent upon which the great archangel treads is primitive force, the phallic serpent of the Freudians, and this glyph teaches us that it is the restrictive prudence of Had which shortens primitive force and prevents it from overflowing from its boundaries. The fall, be it remembered, is represented on the tree by the great serpent with 7 heads, which overpasses the bounds set for it and raises its crowned heads even unto Doth. It is very interesting to observe the manner in which the symbols weave in and out of each other and reinforce and interpret each other's significance and yield their fruits to Kabbalistic contemplation. Aset Ajah. Peace. The order of angels functioning in Had are the Benai Elohim, the sons of the gods. Again, we have the concept of the God of hosts, or armies. One of the most important concepts of arcane science concerns the working of the Creator through intermediaries. The uninitiated and profane. The uninitiated and profane conceive of God as working as the laborer of works. Oh, nice. Who adds brick to brick with his hands, fashioning the edifice. But the initiated conceive of God as working as the great architect of the universe. Designing his plans on the plane of archetypes, to whom come the overseers, the archangels, for their instructions. These last directing the armies of humble toilers who add stone to stone according to the archetypal plan of the Most High. Whenever did the architect designing the edifice work upon it with his two unaided hands? Never. Not even when the universe was a building. So that last sentence sums it up. Whenever did the architect designing the edifice work upon it with his two unaided hands? Never. Not even when the universe was a building. She said, to the uninitiated and the profane, they see God literally as the one building the universe brick by brick. The uninitiated think that. But she says to those who do understand, we know that just like a contractor and an architect don't build the building, they set the plans in motion and they hire the people who then hire the workers to actually do the brick building and laying and whatnot. Likewise, God works in the same way. This is what the archangels and the angels are here for. Now, there's not physical archangels flying around with wings and long robes building the universe, but these archangels represent cosmic principles. You can say like gravity or centrifugal force. It's because these principles exist, they set the framework and the context to be filled with the content. That's why everything happens in patterns. The same way that you see the sun and the planets revolving around it reflects in the atoms circulating the nucleus. Well, the electrons and protons circulating the nucleus of an atom. The same way that people circulate, the boss or the important person, right? That's a algorithm there that expresses itself in whatever medium is necessary. So what's the that's what she was saying earlier, how these primitive people are able to witness the underlying essence of all these different patterns. So it don't matter if it is the planets, the galaxy, a black hole, a popular person, a celebrity, a family member who everyone rotates around. It doesn't matter what the content is. If you're able to see the context, you can work with that because that's a force. That's an archangel, right? Though that's what builds the universe. Principles, concepts. If you're thinking that it's a person with wings flying around, you're what she just called here uninitiated and profane. You can read all the mystical stuff you want, but you're going to misinterpret it. Let's continue. 35. The mundane chakra, as we have already noted, is Mercury, and its symbol is Hermes, Thoth, which we have already considered. 36. The spiritual experience assigned to the Sephirah is the vision of splendor, which is the realization of the glory of God manifesting in the created world. The initiative Hod sees behind the appearance of created things and discerns their creator in the realization of the splendor of nature as the garment of the ineffable. He receives his illumination and becomes a co-worker with the great artificer. It is this realization of the spiritual forces manipulating all manifestations and appearances which is the key to the powers of Hod as wielding in the magic of light. It is by making himself a channel for these forces that the master of white magic brings order into the disorder of the spheres of unbalanced force. Not by deflecting the invisible powers to his personal will. He is the equilibrator of the unbalanced, not the arbitrary manipulator of nature. So that's the thing, right? People come into this game thinking that they're going to manipulate nature. I want to know how to manipulate my reality. I want to know how to manipulate the force. And if that's all you know, okay, I get it. But there should come a point in your study where you understand this is not about manipulating nature. This is about becoming a channel and a vessel for the force and forces that orchestrate reality. There should literally come a point of you working with this magic that you stop desiring stuff. Not because you become jaded and dull, but because you've truly realized that desire in itself indicates an insecurity. It indicates lack, right? So there should come a point where those desires should begin to diminish, right? I ain't judging nobody. We all want stuff. But hopefully after working with this magic, you should want less stuff now than you wanted a couple years ago, right? A couple years ago, you wanted this, and you needed this or you couldn't be happy. If I don't have this, I'm just not going to be happy, right? Today should be different. Today should be different. Magic is not about learning how to manipulate the world in a way that you see fit according to your desires. Those desires should begin to diminish so that as you become a channel and a vessel for that which organizes reality, as you become a channel for that, the desires you have should equally start to lessen. In other words, you should have what's this chapter about? What are the 4 tarot cards? A shortened force, right? Prudence, right? There's a reason for that. Because with great power comes great responsibility. We learned that from Spider-Man. Just because you have the power to do something doesn't mean you do it. Restraint should be exercised, not out of morality and because you don't want to hurt somebody, but you want to make sure that all the force that you have is concentrated in a singular direction and not dispersed willy-nilly on some bullshit. Does that make sense? That's what we're talking about here. That's what we're talking about here. The reason that desires should decrease as your power increases is because you're learning now that it's more efficient and more useful to sacrifice for the greater. What comes to mind is the Magus tarot card. That's what comes to mind immediately when I see that little line right here. He is the equilibrator of the unbalanced, not the arbitrary manipulator of nature. When you look at that Magus card, he's got his one hand up, one hand down. He's pulling down force and arranging matter in accordance with what he's pulling down. He's a channel. He's a vessel. I wonder if that's the true difference between the dark side and the light side. Not whatever the hell everybody else is talking about, but one who has learned to channel that power and either uses it in accordance with being a vessel versus using it as according to being a human ego. Gregory Jones says, I've learned that to desire to be healed, you have to want to heal others because you see everyone as yourself. Everything you do has to be for the greater good of the all. Indeed. There's a thin line between love and hate. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Ray Blackstorm says, damn, I got 10 minutes left till meditation. Keep banging that out, Trav. All right, let's do it. 37. In this sphere, which is the sphere of Mercury's Hermes, god of science and books, how clearly can we see that the supreme virtue is truthfulness, and that the obverse aspect of the Sephirah is that which reveals Mercury in his aspect as the god of thieves and cunning rogues. In esoteric ethics, it is realized that each plane has its own standard of right and wrong. The standard of the physical plane is strength. The standard of the astral plane is beauty. The standard of the mental plane is truth. And the standard of the spiritual plane is that of right and wrong as we understand the terms. Now, she said this before, if you guys recall. This isn't the first time she's mentioned this. On the physical plane, we've got a standard of right and wrong. But on the astral plane, it's different. And on the mental plane, it's different. Because things operate differently. On the astral plane, there's not people walking around having conversations. There is pure energy as it is, emotion as it is. And you recognize it exactly at, like, there's no concealing, there's no hiding. On the physical plane, people can lie, manipulate, cheat, and steal. That doesn't happen on the astral plane. That doesn't happen on the astral plane. Everything is presented as a reflection of what it represents. Therefore, there is no ethic except in terms of spiritual value. All else is at best expediency. In the sphere which is essentially the sphere of the concrete mind, how right it is that the Qabalah should give the supreme virtue as truthfulness. 38. The correspondence in the microcosm is given to the loins and the legs, in accordance with the astrological ruling of the planet Mercury. 39. The symbols associated with Hod are given as the names and versicles and the apron. The names are the words of power, wherein the Magus sums up and evokes into consciousness the multiform potencies of the Benai Elohim. These names are by no manner of means arbitrary and barbaric vocables, without etymology or meaning. They are philosophical formula. In some cases, their interpretation is etymological, as in the case of the Egyptian deities, whose names are built up out of the names and potencies and symbols when used to indicate composite forces. Also understand she's talking about mantras, especially Bij mantras. In all systems of magic, however, which have their root in the Qabalah, the magical names are built up out of the numerical value of the consonants of whatever sacred alphabet is used. There is a Greek, an Arabic, and a Coptic Qabalah, as well as the better-known Hebrew one. These consonants, when replaced by the appropriate numerals, yield a number, which can be dealt with mathematically in many ways. Some of these ways are according to the methods of pure mathematics, the results being then translated back into letters again, and showing very interesting correspondences with the names of similar or related potencies. This is a very curious aspect of Kabbalistic lore, and in the hands of competent exponents yields interesting results. It is, however, full of pitfalls for the unwary, for there is no limit to what it can be made to yield, and only a sound knowledge of first principles can tell us when the analogies are legitimate or otherwise, and prevent us from falling into credulity and superstition. Peace, Frame Star. Peace, Raw Black Storm. Peace, Cosmic Flow. So yeah, one of the things she's talking about here is this whole business of numerology and trying to figure things out by the numbers. It is extremely easy to get lost in that science. It's extremely easy because it's infinite and it's endless. What she said there was first principles are what's going to keep you from getting lost in that. You can sit here and do the numerology on everything. You can literally sit here and do that all day long to the point where, you know, things start getting very uncomfortable psychologically. But that's what I call getting lost in the content and missing the context. The content is infinite. But it's the context that structures the content. That's what she means by first principles. And she said that first principles can tell us when the analogies are legitimate or otherwise. Because sometimes this numerology stuff, if you've ever gotten lost in that rabbit hole, you'll see stuff that makes sense and stuff that don't make sense. Oh, look at that. One page left. One page left. All right, friends. I hope that you enjoyed this reading as we wrap this up. If you haven't already, hit the like button. And say hello in the chat. Peace, Ave Maria. Number 40. The versicles are mantric phrases. Ah, there we go with the mantra. A mantra being a sonorous phrase which, when repeated over and over, after the manner of a rosary or a rudrakash, works upon the mind as a special form of autosuggestion, the psychology of which is too complex to be entered upon now. The apron has immediate associations for the initiates of Solomon, the wise. It is the characteristic garment of the initiate in the lesser mysteries, who is always deemed figuratively to be a craftsman. That is a maker of forms. And as the Sephirah Had is the sphere of the operation of the makers of magical forms, it will be seen that this symbolism is again apposite. The apron covers and conceals the moon center, Yesod, concerning which we will speak in its appropriate place. As has already been noted, Yesod is the functional aspect of the pair of opposites of the astral plane. And in the words of Travis Magus, we work the astral plane through the etheric plane. Oh, yeah. Peace out, Red Black Storm. To the window, to the wall. To the wall. Alligator says Violet is an undercover yogini. LOL. Peace, Red Black Storm. Alright, let's finish this up. So, concerning the 4 eighths of the tarot pack assigned to the Sephiroth, we have already spoken on a previous page. 43. To sum up then, in Hod, we have the sphere of formal magic as distinguished from simple mind power. The forms that are formulated thereon by the magician initiating the forces of nature are the Bene Elohim, or the sons of gods. All right. So that was the chapter on Hod. As always, very enlightening. So basically what we're dealing with now is the accumulated force of the higher planes condensed into a form with the intention to reserve in order to concentrate those forces in a specific direction. So what comes to mind for me is, we're dealing with the sphere that represents thought, study, science, the concrete mind. So I think about a scientist, a librarian, somebody who's dedicated to their work, as opposed to being out and about partying or playing sports or doing anything else. They are reserved their energies so that they can focus entirely upon the work. So likewise in the spiritual plane, this function of Hod is dealing with taking all the influence of Kether, Hakma, Bina, Gibura, Chesed, and Tifereth, and even Netzach, and condensing them like a magnifying glass, so that what is necessary is going to its proper place, and what is unnecessary is also not being wasted. How does that make sense to you? How do you come to interpret Hod? What does Hod mean to you? Before we wrap up, I wonder if anybody can give me what they think about this chapter or this aspect of the Tree of Life. Did you learn anything? Or will it take a little while to digest? Let me know. Let me know in the chat what you guys have picked up from this course, or from this chapter. Ba-rum bum bum, bum 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 bum, bum bum bum, ba-dum ba-dum bum. Ooh, through the window, to the wall. Wow, to the sweat drop down these balls. All these females crawl. Oh, ski ski, oh, ski ski, Let me know. What'd you pick up from this? Let me know, let me know, let me know. Or did you not learn anything? Because that's valid too. Analogies says, gonna have to watch the first hour I missed. Seems to be the translating of Netzach energy into working form. Okay, that's a good interpretation. Taking what we learned about as far as the natural, intuitive, and free-flowing energy of Netzach and condensing it, right? Because think about that. Think of what Netzach represented. And now look at Hod as being reserved, prudence, right? Being something that is constrained for the intention of not wasting it. Whereas Netzach is very expressive, very abundant, right? Netzach is the child of Chesed. They're both the child of Chesed, honestly. But with Netzach, we're talking about nature and just these patterns that are continuing to proliferate. So there's not much concern for reserving anything. But the direct opposite of Hod, all about reservation. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. Because like what she said in this chapter, you've got to think of these Sephiroth not as individuals, but in relationship with one another. Yeah. What else could I be? All apologies. In the sun, I feel as one. In the sun, Mary, Berry. Anthony Hardy says, one thing about knowing, you have to find understanding to gain knowledge. So wisdom is key. Absolutely. Alligator says, this chapter is about the great work. Yes. Right, because Hod is the sphere of the magician. It's the sphere of ceremonial magic. It is the sphere of the practice. So that reservation that she speaks of, that sacrifice, which is what we do during ritual, right? Sacrifice. The sacrifice and the reservation of being a magus, a magician, of practicing the great work is for the greater intent. There's a lot of things that we've given up, right? There's a lot of things that we don't do anymore. There's a lot of, let's see, what are these cards called? Abandoned success. There's a lot of sublimation going on. There's a lot of shortened force. How many times since you being on this path, like she talks about shortened force, which is the 8 of swords. Shortened force. How many times was there something that you could have done, but you decided to not do it? You decided to reserve yourself because you're practicing something different. Right? Prudence and swiftness, right? Swiftness, like what she talked about with the 8 of wands. How many times have somebody asked you about something spiritual and you literally just give them damn near too much because you got so excited, right? That's also a trait of being on this hermetic path. Anthony Hardy says, so how can we prepare for the next advanced realms, and how do you know? So the way that you prepare for the next advanced realm is by completely preparing for this realm. If you don't have this realm under control, you definitely not gonna have the next realm under control. So I mean, you're existing in all these realms simultaneously, but you're only conscious of this one. Well, that's by design. That's not by mistake. So deal with what's on your plate. I mean, think about it. If you are able... think of what I said in the beginning of this chapter. We talk about free will. An indicator of free will is that you're able to manipulate your environment according to your desire, according to your vision. If you can't even do that, that's an indication of a lack of free will, number one. And number two, if you haven't mastered that on the material plane, then how do you think you're going to do that in the astral plane? How do you think you're going to do that in the mental plane? How do you think you're going to do that in the spiritual plane? So preparing for the next realm means mastering the physical realm first. Whatever that means to you. Now, what that should mean to you is you've come to a point internally that you're unaffected by your stimulus. It don't matter what you see, smell, taste, touch, hear. Your inner world is unaffected. That should be the end result. Not a car, not a house, not a partner, not no amount of money in the bank account, but being completely unaffected by the external stimulus. That should be the end result. Once you get that, you've mastered the physical plane, which means that when you start dealing with higher planes, now you're going to bring that mastery there as well. If you're able to maintain your frame regardless of external stimulus, you're naturally starting to master the higher planes. Like it's all these planes are connected. So don't worry about the astral plane, and don't worry about no higher planes or the next plane. Master this one. Stray Panther says, I swear it felt like a Hogwarts class to me. Yes. And this is probably one of the few places on YouTube where it can be entertaining as well as deeply educational. And when I say deeply educational, I mean not just consciously, but also subconsciously. Raphael is cruel but rude. Michelangelo is a party dude. Leonardo leads, Donatello does machines. That's a fact, Jack. The Ninja Turtles represent the 4 elements. And where there's a 4th, there's a hidden 5th. Don't forget it. Stray Panther says, I saw how to approach magic and ritual work. Awesome, awesome. Vincent L. Cristol says, to experience heaven in the future is to live it now. Absolutely. Cosmic Flow says, spirituality is watered down with posers. I ain't no master, but I sure as hell experienced the unusual that posers couldn't comprehend. Facts, man, facts. And what I see often from my students and people who study my work and study the work that we study together, they say things like, I felt like I was behind. I thought that I was behind. I was listening to you guys and I felt like I was behind. But the more that I learned, the more that I realized I'm actually much further ahead than I thought. All these other people are just using buzzwords. They're using fancy phrases, beloved, family, right, to make you feel like you're in a different position. But when you know the science, you know the science. It's that simple. It's that simple. When you know the science, you know the science. Don't worry about these other folks. Don't worry about these other folks. Most of them are too worried about getting money than about spiritual progression or actually teaching from a spiritual perspective. And like somebody said earlier, like Rob Blackstorm said earlier, you can tell by the fruits. Are these people producing maguses? Are they producing maguses or are they producing more customers? Because I'm producing maguses up in here. I don't have to say that. People in the chat will tell you, right? Just look around. These folks, these other folks, what are they producing? It's in the fruit. The black womb man is God. The black womb man. Okay, but how can you use that? How can you use that today to help you in your life? I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying, what can anyone do with that? Take any of these concepts, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to activate your 12th DNA strand. What can I do with that? What can I do with that 12th DNA strand? Like, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying, can any of these people, like, explain how this can practically look? I can practically explain how crystals help you, right? Have you ever heard anybody practically explain how crystals can actually help you? No. They talk about how, oh, well, if you carry this crystal, then it's going to give you good luck, or it's going to ward off bad energy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to be able to break this shit down so it makes sense in the real world, right? I can break this stuff down, make it make sense in the real world, because I know what I'm talking about. Like, I understand this stuff. Anthony Hardy says, how many people read the mystical Qabalah? LOL, not many. So that's where the divine opportunity come from. So knowing you is so easy. Vincent L. Crystal says, Trav, you can sell some Magus cards though. Yeah, I'm working on it. Leonardo leads, Donatello does machines. That's a fact, Jack. Raphael is cool, but rude. Give me a break. Michelangelo is a party dude. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Heroes in a half shell. Turtle power. Av says, any good book recommendations for Akashic Records? Not really. But I would suggest reading some yoga books, like, say, Ch23. Because in a book like Ch23, you learn about the Tattvas, right? Because think about it. Akashic Records, the root word of that is Akash. Akash is not an English word. So any English-speaking people, get to the root of Akash, right? Akash is the fifth element. Where are you going to learn about Akash? You're going to learn about Akash through Tantra. My ultimate recommendation is, and always will be, until I find something better, Ch23. Because in Ch23, at least, you're going to learn about all 5 of the elements and their relationship with each other. Why is there an Akashic Records? How come nobody asks about the Prithvi records, or the Apis records, or the Tejas Agni records, or the Vayu records? There's records on all 5 levels. So what's the relationship between all of them? The Akashic Records are just the potential manifestations of reality. That's it. The potentials. What's even better than the Akashic Records is what's beyond manifestation. Because see, again, with Ch23, you're going to learn that there's levels of existence. You start with the manifest, dense reality of the physical plane, then the etheric plane, then the astral plane, then the mental plane, then this Akashic plane. But then past that, you get what these flat earth people call the firmament. You get Om. You seen that symbol, Om? That's a vibratory field that once something gets into it, it doesn't get out of it. It's this vibratory field that is represented by everything that begins, continues, and ends. The 3 gunas, Rajas, Tattvas, and Sattva. Nothing material or nothing manifest goes beyond that barrier. Yet there's something in you that's beyond that barrier. And that's where we talk about the soul, Buddhi. And all the soul is the material plane's closest reflection of the infinite. And there's even a level past that. which is what we call Shiva or Brahma. When you start dealing with that level of existence, the Akashic records don't matter, because everything below that is an illusion. It's a potentiality that might as well have never happened, because like I said, it doesn't leave the manifest dimension. The manifest dimension is not the true dimension. But my suggestion, if I could assume to know what you're really looking for, I'd say get taught with Shooty. Alligator says, if a teacher ain't teaching you to become a teacher, then you in a motherfucking cult. That's Brother Panic. I mean, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. Cosmic Flow says, my mystical Qabalah book got pages falling out at the end of the book. I need super glue. Hey, mine too. Mine too. That's how you know you work in that book. Alright. So I think we made pretty good time. It is 12/22, January 12th, 12/22. 12/12/222 right now. Good time to end it. Does anyone have any questions, any comments? Especially related to the matter that we just went over. And also, we got the Goetia class and the Servitor class, how to create your own Servitor spirits and work with them. We got those on the way, probably within the next couple of months. But in the meantime, I would like to probably teach something, maybe make a class or a workshop, I guess, on some of the fundamentals of magic or whatever. Maybe some tarot, some astrology, I don't know. I'm asking you guys, what would you like to learn about? I did a poll. If you look in the community tab of this channel, you'll see. But let me know what you guys would love to learn about, right? I got a million options, so I think it's best if I just ask what you guys want to know. But yeah. Av says, what is your end game, Trav? That's a good question. What do you mean by end game? Can you specify that question a little bit more? Vincent Del Cristol says, Dharana Darshan is a must-read. It's like a manual to this work. Absolutely. Absolutely. AV says, what is your end game? My end game is to finish my work so I can get the fuck up out of here and not have to come back. That's my end game. To do everything that I need to do so I can be finished. So I'm tired of this church. Amen. Vincent L. Crystal says, how to channel Risky. Aww. Risky used to be the name of a girl that I was seeing for a while who wanted to be treated like a dog. So that was her dog name. For the record, I'm not really into that. That's what she was into. But Risky brings back memories. By the way, all the stuff that y'all are getting into, y'all need to do some shadow work, because it's coming from propaganda. I'm telling you, propaganda. If it wasn't for the internet, y'all wouldn't have 75% of the fetishes y'all got. I'm telling you. Oh, but it happens naturally in nature. Sure, but how frequently have you seen it with your own eyes? Tawazra 13 says, what does the ring on the nose represent? Melanin represents black melanin. Cosmic Flow says the 7 chakras, the 7 princes of hell. Absolutely. All the 7s are the same thing. 7 planets, etc., etc. Matthew Watson says, I think tarot and astrology will be great, and maybe a class on one of those colored books later on. Ah, okay. That's a good example, or a good idea. Class on them colored books. Coloreds. I love you, coloreds. Some of my best friends are colored. They used to refer to black people as coloreds, and now people are saying people of color. What's the difference? Shit don't change, man. People of color, coloreds, Negroes. These folks will fall for anything. Gotta pay attention. All right, so I think that's it. You guys don't seem to have too many questions here. Cosmic Flow says, y'all seen Hell Date on BET. That's what shadow work looks like. A throwback. I haven't seen Hell Date. Coloreds. Rack 'em. Rack bar. Rack 'em. Rack. Allah. Allah rack bar. All right. So, yeah, I hope you guys have a great night. A fantastic, splendid, beautiful evening. I think it might be time for me to go ahead and call it quits. Call it quitsters. Allah Rakbar. All right. Have a great night, everybody. This was fun. It's always fun. And I will continue doing it as long as I can do it, which will be forever, for all time. As long as there is a physical plane, I will be teaching the occult sciences. So, this is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I love you guys. Peace. I'm blackity black and I'm black, y'all. Allah, Allah, rack bar. Rack 'em, rack bar. Rack 'em, rack bar. Hello, poison ivy. Rack 'em, rack, poison ivy. Rack. Hey, this is my avatar of Prakriti. You like? Prakriti. I mean, who better, right? Look at the flowy stuff on the back. Isn't that cool? Poison ivy. Rack. She crazy as a daisy. Bomb, bomb, bomb. That's my Prakriti. And this is my avatar for artificial intelligence. Lovely. My favorite mad scientist in Dexter's laboratory lives the smartest boy you've ever seen, but Dee blows his experiments to smithereens. There is gloom and doom while things go boom in Dexter's lab. Alright, I'm out. Time to go. Remember what Dick Gregory said? Sleep with your head facing north. Natural north. The saga continues. Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang. Alright. I don't like leaving you guys, but I have to. I'll see you next time. Ooh, it's Thursday. Maybe we'll live stream again. Tonight. Only on YouTube. See you then. Peace. Love you all. Have a good night.